The story of Max the Monster Truck. Once upon a time, in a small town, there was a monster truck named Max. Max was big, powerful, and had huge wheels that could crush anything in its path. He loved to show off his power and would often perform at the local fair, where he would race and jump over obstacles to the delight of the children and adults alike. One day, Max was getting ready for a big performance at the fair. He was revving his engine, bouncing up and down, and making a lot of noise. But as he was about to start his show, he heard a strange noise coming from his engine. Max tried to ignore it, but the noise kept getting louder and louder until he could no longer ignore it. Suddenly, Max's engine stopped working and he was unable to move. The children were disappointed and Max felt very sad. The fair was over and Max had let everyone down. Max was taken to the mechanic's shop, where he was examined and repaired. The mechanic found out that Max had been working too hard and needed some rest. After a few days of rest, Max was ready to perform again. But this time, Max had learned his lesson. He realized that he needed to take care of himself and not overwork his engine. Max started to perform more carefully and thoughtfully, using his power and strength only when he needed to. The children loved Max's new performance style, and Max felt happy and fulfilled. From that day on, Max became known as the monster truck who cared for himself and his engine. He continued to perform at the fair, but he never overworked himself again. Max was loved by all the children and adults alike, and he became a shining example of how to take care of oneself and still be strong and powerful. The children would often say,
Max is the best monster truck ever because he takes care of himself.
And Max would reply,
Yes, taking care of myself is important, but so is having fun and showing off my power.
The children would cheer, and Max would roar his engine, happy to be a role model for all the kids. And from that day on, Max always remembered to take care of himself, but he never forgot to have fun and show off his power too. The end. Once upon a time, there lived 3 rats named George, Felix, and Belle. They all lived together in a small hole under a large tree. George was a brave rat who loved to dream big and had always wanted to fly. He spent his days staring up at the sky, watching birds soar and wishing that he too could take to the skies. Felix was a rat with a great mind and loved to experiment with new things. He was always building and creating new things to make their home more comfortable and interesting. Belle was a rat with many ideas and loved to work with Felix to bring their ideas to life. One day, George shared his dream of flying with Felix and Belle. Felix was immediately intrigued by the idea and started brainstorming different ways that they could make it happen. Belle suggested building a contraption that would allow George to fly, but Felix had an even better idea. He suggested building a hot air balloon that could lift George up into the sky. Belle was skeptical at first, but Felix's enthusiasm was contagious. and soon they were all excited about the idea. They spent weeks gathering materials and working on the balloon, using Felix's expertise in building and Belle's creativity to make it come to life. Finally, the balloon was ready. George was filled with excitement as they climbed inside and prepared to take off. Felix lit the fire underneath the balloon, and slowly but surely, they started to rise into the air. At first, George was a little bit scared, but he quickly got used to the feeling of floating high above the ground. As they soared through the air, he could see the whole world spread out beneath him, and he felt like he was flying. The trio spent hours up in the sky, exploring new sights and experiencing the thrill of flight. But eventually, it was time to come back down to earth. They landed safely back on the ground, and George was filled with a sense of accomplishment. From that day forward, George, Felix, and Belle became known as the Flying Rat Crew. They continued to build new and exciting contraptions, exploring new heights and pushing the limits of what was possible. They learned to believe in themselves, be creative, dream big, and stop doubting themselves. Together, they proved that anything was possible if you had the courage to try. And so, the story of George and his friends became an inspiration to rats and humans alike, reminding us all to never give up on our dreams and to always believe that anything is possible. The end. The Frog and Her Sleeping Socks. Once upon a time, there was a small green frog named Lily. Lily was a happy-go-lucky frog who loved to hop around and explore the world around her. However, there was one thing that made her truly happy, and that was her sleeping socks. Her grandmother had given them to her before she passed away, and they were the only thing that she had left to remember her by. Every night, Lily would slip on her cozy socks and curl up in her lily pad, feeling warm and safe as she drifted off to sleep. She cherished her sleeping socks more than anything in the world, and would never let them out of her sight. One day, while Lily was out exploring the pond, she came across a group of mischievous foxes. They were always causing trouble and stealing things, and Lily knew to stay away from them. However, as she hopped past them, she noticed that one of the foxes was holding something that looked very familiar.
It was her sleeping socks!
Lily was devastated. She couldn't believe that the foxes had taken the one thing that meant the most to her. She knew that she had to get them back, but she didn't know how. The foxes were too quick for her, and she didn't want to get into a fight with them. Days went by, and Lily couldn't stop thinking about her sleeping socks. She missed the warm and cozy feeling they gave her, and she couldn't sleep without them. She decided to ask for help from her friends in the pond. The other animals in the pond were more than happy to help Lily get her socks back. They all loved Lily and knew how much her socks meant to her. Together, they came up with a plan to retrieve her stolen socks. They waited until the foxes were sleeping, then snuck into their den. It was a risky move, but they knew they had to do it. Lily's friend, a sneaky snake named Sam, slithered in and grabbed the socks with his tail. He carefully brought them back to Lily, who was waiting outside the den. Lily was overjoyed to have her sleeping socks back. She hugged each of her friends and thanked them for helping her. She knew that she couldn't have done it without them. From that day on, Lily made sure to keep her socks safe and sound. She knew that they were irreplaceable, and she didn't want to risk losing them again. She felt grateful for her friends who had helped her retrieve her beloved socks, and she knew that they would always have her back. As for the foxes, they learned their lesson. They realized that it was wrong to steal from others, and they promised to never do it again. Lily forgave them, but she made sure to keep a close eye on them from then on. In the end, Lily learned that even in the darkest of times, there are always friends who will be there to help you. She also learned to cherish the things that are most important to her, and to never take them for granted. Her sleeping socks may have been just a pair of socks, but they were also a symbol of the love and memories that she shared with her grandmother, and for that, they were priceless. The end. The Tree and Little Boy. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful tree that stood tall in the middle of a park. The tree had been there for many years and had seen generations of people come and go. One day, a little boy came to the park and started playing around the tree's trunk. He quickly fell in love with the tree and started spending most of his time under its branches. As days turned into weeks, the boy and the tree became best friends. They would sit together, talk and create stories. The boy would tell the tree about his school, his friends and his dreams, and the tree would listen patiently, providing shade and comfort. However, one day, some bad guys came to the park with axes, ready to cut down the tree. The boy was devastated, and he knew he had to do something to save his dear friend. He thought long and hard, and then came up with an idea. He went to the bad guys and convinced them to put down their axes, telling them how important the tree was to him and how much he loved it. The bad guys were moved by the boy's passion and decided to leave the tree alone. From that day on, the boy and the tree were inseparable. They continued to spend time together, creating new stories and memories. And the boy knew that he had saved his friend from harm, thanks to his determination and love. Years went by, and the boy grew up to become a successful man. He continued to visit the tree every day, reminiscing about their childhood and the time he saved it from being cut down. The tree stood strong and proud, a symbol of their enduring friendship. In the end, the boy realized that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can make the biggest difference. And he knew that the tree would always be there for him, just like a true friend. The end. story of Wrecker the bulldozer. In the small town of Wreckville, there was a bulldozer named Wrecker. Unlike other bulldozers, Wrecker had a unique talent. He was a skilled wrecker, able to lift and move large and heavy vehicles with ease. Wrecker had a garage on the outskirts of town where he spent most of his time. He loved nothing more than helping out his fellow vehicles in need, whether it was lifting a broken-down car out of a ditch or moving a truck that had been in an accident. One day, a huge storm hit Wreckville, and there was chaos and destruction everywhere. Cars and trucks were scattered all over the streets, and the townspeople were struggling to clear the debris and get things back to normal. Wrecker knew that he had to help out, so he quickly rushed over to the streets and started lifting and moving the damaged vehicles with his powerful blades. His fellow vehicles watched in awe as Wrecker lifted cars and trucks that no one else could. As Wrecker was working, he noticed a small car that was buried under a pile of debris. It was a red convertible, and its roof was crushed under the weight of the debris. Wrecker knew he had to help, so he carefully lifted the car with his blades and moved it out of harm's way. The driver of the car, a young man named Max, was amazed at how Wrecker had saved his car. He had never seen anything like it before. Wrecker gently placed the car on the road and asked Max if he was okay. Max nodded and thanked Wrecker for his help. From that day on, Max and Wrecker became great friends. Max would often visit Wrecker in his garage and tell him about his life in Wreckville. Wrecker would listen attentively, always eager to hear what Max had to say.